Hello and welcome. To get started, I would like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the land that I am presenting on today, paying deep respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Really, the purpose of today's video is to outline the kind of information you need to be capturing when referencing a table and a figure in your assignments. When I say figure, I mean anything that is a visual representation of information, whether that be like a graph or something like a photograph, a picture found on the web. Anything visual requires a little bit more referencing than your regular in-text citations. So normally you would just include an author name and date of publication to reference in text in an assignment. When you're using tables and figures, a little bit more information is required. So the examples we have here are taken directly from our APA 7 guide. This is available for you online. And really, I want to just get you thinking about the kind of information you have to be capturing. Don't feel like you have to remember absolutely everything that I talk about in the video today, but really this is just to get you started and thinking about what you need to be capturing when you're referencing tables and figures. So you can see here that there are actually a lot of similarities. Whether you're referencing something from a journal article, a book, or a web page, figure and table references all start the same. We start with the number of the figure or table we're using in the assignment. So if it's the first one, we have table 1, figure 1, so on and so on. Then we have a descriptive caption or title. Then we have the figure or table itself. So the actual photograph, image, table, graph, whatever sits in here. And then underneath we have a note section. Now this note section looks a little bit complicated, but it is exactly the same information that we're capturing for our end text referencing anyway. It's just displayed a little bit differently directly underneath the figure or the table. So this is an example of a figure from a journal article, and you can see that I've started up the top with figure 1. This is the first figure that I'm using in this presentation, so it's titled figure 1, and that's consistent with the breakdown that we have here. Underneath, we have the descriptive caption or title in title case and italics. So we've got capital letters through here as title case, and this has been italicized. Then we have the figure itself. So in this case, this is a graph that I've taken from this journal article. And underneath we have a note section. And the note section is where things will start to change. The information here will be different depending on the source, but this formatting is the same regardless of where you're getting the figure information from or what source you're using. So you'll see we have the note section here, note in italics with a full stop. Then we have the word from. Because this is a direct replication of what is in this journal article, it hasn't been changed in any way, it is just from. Then we have in quotation marks and capital letters, so title casing again, the title of the article. Then we have by, the author's first initial of their first name and a full stop, the author's surname, comma, the date of publication, comma, the title of the journal the article was published in, a comma, the volume in italics, the issue in brackets and a comma, P dot for the page that this figure came from, so the exact page that this graph was in this article, and then the copyright information. And we have copyright, the date of publication by, and then again, the author name. Now this is our end text reference that I've got down here. You can see the hanging indent, and you'll see that all of the information that we are using in this note section is stuff we're capturing already for our end text reference. It's just displayed in a slightly different way. You'll see we're still collecting the author names, the date of publication, the title of the journal article, the title of the journal the article was published in, the volume and issue, the page range, and in this case we have the DOI. So we don't include the DOI for the note section, but all of that other information is represented in here, just formatted slightly differently, moved around a little bit differently. So like I said, it's not like you're having to reinvent the wheel or find new information for this. We're already capturing this for our end text reference. We're just formatting it for our note section when we're using figures and tables in our assignments. This is another example of a figure from a journal article just broken down. We still have that note section. So depending on how you're using the figure or the table, you may have adapted from because this, like I said, is exactly the way it exists in the journal article, it's just from. But if I had made any changes to this, then I would say it was adapted from. So the information is still coming there. I've just manipulated it slightly differently. And then we have the title of the journal article in title case and in quote marks, by the first initials of the author's first name and middle name, their surname. In this case, we have two author names, so they're connected with A and D, and that same formatting of the author name again. The date of publication, the title of the journal the article was published in, the volume, the issue, the page that this figure came from, and then the copyright information. So like you can see here, it's the same format again, obviously just different information for different sources. But the more you do it, the more you'll get used to that formatting and the easier the referencing this way will become. So this is a figure or a table from a book. In this case, I created a table. This is the first table that I'm using in this presentation, so it is titled Table 1 in bold at the top. So again, following exactly that same information formatting that we have for the rest of our figures and tables. Then we have the title of the table underneath in italics and title case. Then we have the table itself and the note section underneath. So again, following exactly the same formatting rules. So I actually created this table with information from a couple of different pages in this book. So in that case, it is adapted from. It doesn't, it's not a direct snapshot of a section of the book. It's been adapted from a couple of pages. So we have our note in italics and a full stop, adapted from. Then we have the title of the book that this information came from with title case and italics. In brackets, we have the edition, if there is one. In this case, this book was a second edition, so we include the edition. The page or page range. Like I said, I adapted this from a couple of different pages. So we have a page range and pp dot to denote that there is a page range here, followed by that range, close brackets and a comma. Then exactly the same as our journal reference, we have by, the author initials, and then their surname. If there was any more authors, we would include them along here. But this is just a single author, so we only have one. Then a comma. Then the date of publication, a comma, the publisher that this book was published through, and then we have the copyright information. And the copyright information reflects the date of publication and the publisher. And again, this is our end text reference down here for this book. And you can see that we are collecting, again, the same information. We're collecting author name and initials, the date of publication, the title of the book, the edition, and the publisher. The only difference really being is that we've included the page range here because we need to cite where this information is coming from specifically, but all the rest of that is already captured in our end text reference. Again, this is that reference broken down with just some color coding to sort of break apart the different elements. It feels like when you're referencing figures and tables that there is a lot of information that you have to include in the notes section, and to be fair, yes, you do. But once you start seeing them as little individual pieces of information, okay, we've got title, okay, we've got edition, breaking them down into smaller pieces and just pushing them to fit together in this format, which is the referencing style, makes it much less intimidating. So this is a figure from a website, and you can see here we have titled it exactly the same way. This is the second figure I'm using in this presentation, so it is figure 2 in bold up the top. Then we have an italicized title underneath. Because this is a botanical name, we reflect the correct titling for it, so we keep this second one as a lowercase. Then we have the figure itself and the note section underneath. So you'll see that, yes, as we're going through, it's pretty consistent following this, but then obviously from here on, the referencing information does change. So because this is a direct replication of the image on this site it's from, I haven't adapted it at all. Then we have the title of the page, reflecting the correct titling, capitalizing in title case where possible, but also, like I said, reflecting that binomial rule with the lowercase sclerosa. Comma, by the first initial of the author's first name and a full stop, the author's surname and a comma, the date. This web page did not have a date attached. There was no date attached to this image. So in that case, we use our n.d. which denotes no date, comma. Then we have the title of the website that this image came from, which is Atlas of Living Australia. And then after that, in brackets and a live link, we have a link directly to that resource with a full stop. Then we have the copyright information at the end. Because copyright is essentially something that is applied to anything as soon as it's created, even though this doesn't have a date attached, we can assume that it is covered by copyright and it is up to current. When I'm recording this video, it is currently 2022. So we have copyright up to current, which is 2022, by, and then the author name. And again, this is our end text reference, and you can see that information that we're using for our notes section reflected here. So what if you're referencing a figure from multiple sources? There is definitely a way to do that. This is the first way. So again, we're following exactly that same titling style. So we have figure 3, third figure I'm using in this presentation, and the title of the figure underneath. I don't have the expertise to make this kind of figure, so we're just going to pretend that there is a beautiful figure sitting in here. And then we have our notes section underneath. So in which case, if we're creating a figure from multiple sources, we're definitely adapting from. And then we list both or all of the sources that we're creating this figure from in exactly that same way. So this is an example for 2 books, A Manual of Acupuncture and Principles of Anatomy and Physiology, listed in alphabetical order according to the author's surname. So how they would be listed in our reference list is how we're listing them in our note section, divided by a semicolon here. So we have our first note section here. I know it looks like it's a lot of information, but really this is the first note section here, again from the Manual of Acupuncture, and then our second note section here from that Tortora textbook. So this is one way you can do it. And this is the other way that you can reference a figure from multiple sources. So if it's very clear where 2 pieces of information are coming from, so for example, you have one column of a table coming from one source and another column coming from another, it's very easy to differentiate between the 2. You can reference like we have on the previous slide. However, if we have, for example, like this table here, which again, forgive me, this is sort of a made up table. This is the second table that we have in our presentation. So this is table 2, title underneath, following exactly that same formatting. And you can see throughout this table, we have multiple sources sort of scattered between them, and it's not quite clear. There's no real differentiation between like blocks of information. It's all sort of scattered through, in which case you can use that author, comma, date of publication referencing style. Neither is more correct than the other. It is really just what makes the most sense in the context of what you're trying to do. So like I said, if it's very clear and you've got 2 or 3 or whatever different blocks of information, you can reference it like we have in the previous slide. Or if there is multiple references sort of scattered through, so like a table like this, or maybe you're referencing a diagram of a plant and you're using multiple textbooks to reference different parts of that, you can use this in-text referencing to differentiate between them. Really, when we're referencing, what we're trying to do is make it as clear where the information is coming from as possible, and you have that judgment. Whatever you feel like is the easiest way to display that information, display that referencing information, then that's the best way to do it. What if the figure is something that you have created? In that case, you would follow exactly the same titling style. So this is the 4th figure I'm using in this presentation. We have figure 4 in bold at the top and then a title underneath. Because I am the person that took this photo, the copyright holder, the copyright owner is me. So I do not need to reference it. When we're including such complex note sections underneath, what we're really trying to do is just make sure that the copyright holder of that image, figure, table, whatever, is getting enough recognition and getting the copyright attribution that they need. Because I am the copyright holder, because I took this photo, I do not need to include a note section, and I do not need to include an end text reference either. This is obviously a bit of a silly title. I would recommend just making it very clear in your titling that you have taken the photo or drawn the picture, whatever you might be doing. Something like Blossom with Bee, photograph taken by Odette McCarthy, etc., etc. So obviously note sections are pretty bulky and would eat up a lot of words, but thankfully, as according to the APA 7 referencing guide, the figures, tables, and note sections in your assignments are not included in the word count. So the in-text references are, so for example, references like this, if you've titled a table, or if you've created a table and added references like this, these do count, but those blocky note sections absolutely do not. So this brings us to the end of this presentation. I realized that was a lot of information to go through, but there is plenty of referencing support through our library guides and our referencing guide. Have a go, try it yourself. Like I said, it's not anything that, it's not any new information, like you're not capturing any new information. It's really just getting a handle on that note section formatting and where all the commas go, etc., etc. If you are referencing tables and figures, definitely have a go first, but you can always reach out to the library for support if you need to. We're always here to help. So thank you so much for watching and good luck with your studies.